The call came at 2:13 in the morning. Ethan Carter stared at his vibrating phone while rain hammered against his apartment windows. He almost ignored it. Nobody called that late unless it was bad news, and after 10 years of silence from his family, he had taught himself not to expect anything good. But when he saw the hospital name on the screen, his stomach tightened. "Mr. Carter?" The tired voice asked after he answered. "Yes, this is St. Mary's Medical Center. Your father has been admitted to intensive care. You should come immediately." For a moment, Ethan forgot how to breathe. His father, the same man who stopped answering his calls after marrying Vanessa, the same man who slowly disappeared from Ethan's life while his stepmother poisoned every conversation between them. Birthdays forgotten, invitations ignored, holidays cancelled with excuses that never sounded real. Still, he was his father. Ethan grabbed his jacket and drove through the storm with shaking hands. The hospital parking lot glistened beneath yellow lights. Rainwater soaked his shoes as he ran toward the entrance. Everything smelled like disinfectant and burned coffee inside. Nurses rushed through hallways while machines beeped endlessly in distant rooms. At the ICU desk, Ethan gave his name. The nurse looked uncomfortable. Family is already with him. Before Ethan could ask what that meant, a familiar voice sliced through the hallway. "Well," Vanessa said coldly, "look who finally decided to show up." She stood near the elevators wearing an expensive cream-colored coat, her makeup flawless despite the hour. Not a single tear stained her face. Ethan clenched his jaw. How bad is he? Vanessa crossed her arms. "The doctors say he may not make it through the night." The words hit like a brick to the chest. "I want to see him." Her expression tightened immediately. "He's resting. He's my father, and I'm his wife," she snapped. "Don't make this harder than it already is." Ethan stared at her. Even now, she sounded annoyed instead of heartbroken. Something felt wrong. Before he could argue again, Vanessa's phone rang. She stepped away toward the vending machines, lowering her voice. Ethan took the opportunity. He walked quietly down the ICU hallway until he found room 214. The curtain was partially open. Inside, his father looked smaller than Ethan remembered. Tubes ran from his arms, and oxygen hissed softly beside the bed. His once strong face looked pale and sunken. Ethan's chest tightened painfully. Then he noticed Vanessa standing beside the bed again. She must have circled through another entrance. She leaned close to his father's ear and pulled several papers from a leather folder. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Just sign it." She murmured softly, "Everything will finally be ours." Ethan froze. His father blinked weakly at the papers. His trembling hand barely moved. "I can't read. You don't need to," Vanessa said quickly, forcing a pen into his fingers. "It's just paperwork." Something icy crawled up Ethan's spine. His father looked confused, frightened. Then Ethan noticed someone else in the room. A young nurse stood near the medication monitor pretending to check numbers. But her phone was slightly raised from her pocket. Recording, the nurse briefly glanced toward Ethan through the curtain. Her eyes widened slightly, warning him to stay quiet. Vanessa kept pressing. "Come on," she whispered sharply. "Before your son shows up pretending he cares." Ethan's blood boiled. He pushed the curtain aside. What the hell is going on? Vanessa jumped back so fast she nearly dropped the papers. "Ethan," his father whispered weakly, his cloudy eyes filling with emotion. "Dad?" But before Ethan could reach the bed, Vanessa stepped between them. "You shouldn't be here." "I heard you," Ethan shouted. "What are those papers?" "They're legal documents," Vanessa snapped. "None of your business." His father suddenly coughed violently, struggling for air. Machines began beeping faster. The nurse rushed forward immediately. "Sir, you need to calm down." Vanessa pointed toward the door dramatically. "Get him out. He's upsetting my husband." 2 security guards appeared moments later. Ethan stared helplessly as they grabbed his arms. "Dad," he yelled, "don't sign anything." His father tried to speak, but the oxygen mask covered his mouth. As security dragged Ethan backward into the hallway, he caught one final glimpse of the nurse. She subtly slipped her phone into her pocket and gave Ethan the smallest nod. Like she had just captured something Vanessa never wanted anyone to hear. Ethan barely slept after leaving the hospital. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw his father's trembling hand gripping the pen while Vanessa whispered in his ear like a snake. By sunrise, anger and guilt twisted together inside his chest so tightly he felt sick. He should have fought harder years ago. Maybe then his father wouldn't have died surrounded by lies. At 8:17 the next morning, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Mr. Carter," a soft female voice asked. Ethan immediately recognized her. "The nurse. My name is Lily. We need to talk somewhere private." An hour later, Ethan sat inside a nearly empty diner 3 blocks from the hospital. Rain still tapped against the windows while old country music played quietly overhead. Lily entered wearing jeans and a gray hoodie instead of scrubs. Without the hospital uniform, she looked younger than Ethan remembered. Nervous, too, she slid into the booth across from him and placed her phone carefully on the table. "I could lose my job for this," she said quietly. Ethan leaned forward. "What exactly did you record?" Lily hesitated before pressing play. Vanessa's voice filled the space between them. "Just sign it. Everything will finally be ours." Ethan's stomach tightened instantly. The recording continued with the sounds of paper moving and his father breathing weakly through the oxygen mask. "I can't read. You don't need to," Vanessa replied sharply. "It transfers everything automatically." Then came several seconds of silence before his father whispered something so faint Ethan almost missed it. "Where's Ethan?" Lily looked up sadly. Vanessa answered immediately. "He didn't come. He doesn't care about you anymore." Ethan felt like someone punched him directly in the chest. "That's a lie," he muttered. "There's more," Lily said gently. She turned the volume higher. Vanessa sighed impatiently in the recording. "I told you years ago he stopped calling. You need to let him go." Ethan's hands curled into fists beneath the table. For 10 years he had believed his father abandoned him, but suddenly every unanswered message, every ignored birthday card, every canceled visit felt different. "What else did she hide?" Ethan whispered. Lily paused the recording. "Your father kept asking for you after surgery yesterday." Vanessa told staff he was confused and emotional. Ethan stared at the coffee growing cold in front of him. Memories flooded back all at once, the missed graduations. The unopened letters returned to sender. The Christmas gifts mailed back without explanation. Vanessa had stood in the middle of all of it, like a wall. She isolated him, Ethan said quietly. Lily nodded. "I started noticing things months ago. She controlled every visitor, every medication question, every phone call. Last night crossed a line." Ethan rubbed his face tiredly. "Can this prove fraud?" "Possibly," Lily replied, "but there's another problem." She reached into her bag and pulled out copies of paperwork. At the top was the title, "Property Transfer Authorization." Ethan's eyes widened. "The lake house?" he asked. His father's lake house had belonged to Ethan's late mother before she died. It was the only place Ethan ever truly felt at home as a child. Lily nodded grimly. "Vanessa filed emergency requests early this morning. She's moving that fast. She's planning to sell everything immediately." Ethan felt rage burn through him again. His father wasn't even gone yet. Before he could respond, Lily's phone buzzed. Her face paled after reading the message. "What is it?" Ethan asked. She swallowed hard. "Your father passed away 20 minutes ago." The words hollowed him out instantly. Outside the diner window, rainwater streamed down the glass in blurry waves. Ethan suddenly remembered fishing with his father at the lake when he was 9 years old. Remembered his father teaching him how to skip stones while laughing whenever Ethan failed. For years, Ethan convinced himself those memories meant nothing to his father anymore. Now he realized someone had spent years trying to erase him. Lily carefully slid the phone with the recording toward him. "You deserve the truth," she said softly. Ethan looked down at the device. Vanessa thought she had one. She thought a dying man's weak signature would bury the truth forever, but she didn't know someone had been listening. The funeral home smelled of lilies and polished wood. Ethan stood alone near the back wall, staring at his father's closed casket, while quiet conversations echoed through the room. Outside, gray clouds covered the sky, turning the stained glass windows dull and colorless. Vanessa had planned everything perfectly. The massive flower arrangements, the expensive photographs displayed beside the altar, the dramatic black veil hiding her dry eyes whenever guests approached to offer sympathy. To everyone else, she looked like the grieving widow, but Ethan could still hear her whisper from the hospital room. "Just sign it." His jaw tightened. Several relatives avoided eye contact as they passed him. Vanessa had spent years painting Ethan as the selfish son who disappeared from the family. Most people believed her, and honestly, part of Ethan used to believe it too. Near the front row, Vanessa rested one hand dramatically over her chest while speaking to a group of family friends. "He abandoned his father years ago," she said loudly enough for Ethan to hear. "Richard died heartbroken." A few people glanced back at Ethan with quiet judgment. The words cut deep even though he now knew they were lies. Ethan started toward the exit, suddenly unable to breathe inside the crowded room. But before he reached the doors, Vanessa's sharp voice stopped him. "Oh, and Ethan," she called sweetly. The room quieted. Vanessa slowly walked toward him in black heels, carrying herself like she already owned everything his father left behind. "I think it's important everyone knows Richard updated his will before he passed." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Ethan stared at her coldly. "This isn't the time. I disagree." Vanessa replied smoothly. "Family deserves clarity." She turned toward the guests with fake sadness painted across her face. "Richard left everything to me." Several relatives nodded approvingly. Vanessa continued, enjoying every second. "The house, the savings, the properties, all of it." Then her eyes locked onto Ethan's. "Some people don't deserve second chances after disappearing for 10 years. The humiliation burned through him. Ethan looked around the room, realizing most people truly believed he abandoned his father willingly. Years of lies had rewritten his entire relationship with the man lying inside the casket. For one terrible moment, he considered walking away. Maybe it wasn't worth fighting anymore. Then the funeral home doors opened. Lily stepped inside, and beside her walked an older man carrying a leather briefcase. Vanessa's confident smile vanished instantly. The man approached calmly. "Mrs. Carter, I'm attorney Daniel Reeves." The room fell silent again. Vanessa recovered quickly. "Now isn't appropriate." "I believe it is." The lawyer replied evenly, especially regarding the legality of the documents signed yesterday evening. Ethan saw panic flash across Vanessa's face for the first time. "What documents?" one of Richard's brothers asked. Lily stepped forward, gripping her phone tightly. "The ones she pressured him to sign while heavily medicated," she said clearly. Whispers exploded across the room. Vanessa pointed furiously. "She's lying." Lily looked directly at her. "No, but your own voice tells the truth." Before Vanessa could react, Lily pressed play. The recording echoed through the funeral home speakers. "Just sign it. Everything will finally be ours." Complete silence fell over the room. Vanessa's face drained of color. Richard's weak voice followed. "I can't read. You don't need to." Vanessa answered impatiently. Guests exchanged horrified looks. Then came the part that shattered everything. "Where's Ethan?" Richard whispered painfully. Vanessa's recorded voice responded immediately. "He didn't come. He doesn't care about you anymore." Ethan lowered his eyes as emotion crashed into him all over again. Several relatives turned toward Vanessa in disbelief, but the final words broke the room completely. Richard's voice, faint and trembling, "Tell Ethan the lake house was always his mother's. I wanted him to have it." A woman near the front gasped softly. Vanessa lunged toward Lily. "Turn that off." Attorney Reeves stepped between them immediately. "That recording has already been copied and submitted to the court this morning." Vanessa froze. For the first time in years, her mask finally cracked. The polished widow disappeared, revealing pure fury underneath. "You ruined everything," she hissed at Ethan, but Ethan simply stared at his father's casket, not because of the inheritance. Not because Vanessa had finally been exposed, but because after 10 years of silence, his father's final thoughts had been about him. 3 months later, Vanessa Carter walked out of the courthouse surrounded by reporters, her expression hidden behind oversized sunglasses. Nobody looked at her with sympathy anymore. The investigation uncovered everything. Forged signatures, manipulated medical documents, hidden phone records, even deleted voicemail messages Richard had left for Ethan over the years. begging to reconnect after arguments Vanessa carefully created between them. One voicemail nearly destroyed Ethan when he first heard it. "Son, I don't know why you stopped answering me," Richard's tired voice said through tears. "If I did something wrong, please let me fix it." Ethan had never received the message. Vanessa had deleted it before he could even hear it. The court overturned the inheritance transfer completely. Vanessa lost access to the estate, and criminal fraud charges followed soon after. Most relatives who once defended her quietly disappeared from her life, but revenge stopped mattering to Ethan faster than he expected. Because once the anger settled, grief took its place, real grief, the kind that arrives when it's too late to repair lost years. On a cool October morning, Ethan drove alone to the lake house his mother once loved. Autumn leaves drifted across the long gravel driveway while sunlight reflected softly against the water. The place looked smaller than he remembered, but it still smelled like cedar wood and old coffee inside. He walked slowly through the familiar rooms, touching dusty shelves and faded photographs. In the hallway closet, he found an old fishing rod his father used when Ethan was a kid. The sight nearly broke him. For years, Ethan imagined his father willingly abandoning him. Now every memory felt painfully unfinished instead. Near sunset, a car pulled into the driveway. Lily stepped out holding a small storage box. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said gently. Ethan shook his head. "No, come in." She placed the box carefully on the kitchen table. "These were your father's personal things from the hospital," she explained. "The lawyer thought you should have them." Inside were reading glasses, a watch, a worn leather wallet, and a sealed envelope with Ethan's name written across the front in shaky handwriting. His hands trembled opening it. Inside was a flash drive. Lily looked surprised. "You didn't know?" Ethan shook his head slowly. They connected the flash drive to an old television in the living room. After several seconds, the screen flickered to life. Richard appeared sitting in a hospital chair, looking weak but fully conscious. The video had clearly been recorded days before his death. "Ethan," his father began softly, "if you're seeing this, then I ran out of time." Ethan's throat tightened instantly. "I should have fought harder for you," Richard continued. "After your mother died, I became lonely and weak. Vanessa slowly convinced me you hated me. Every year, I believed her more because I was ashamed you never answered." Tears burned Ethan's eyes. "I didn't know she was hiding your messages until recently," Richard whispered. "When I found out the truth, I tried fixing everything, but by then my health was failing." Richard paused, struggling for breath. "The lake house belongs to you. It always did. But more than that, I need you to know something before I go." He looked directly into the camera. "I never stopped loving you, son." Ethan finally broke. Years of anger, confusion, and loneliness collapsed inside him all at once. He lowered his head into his hands while silent tears fell through his fingers. Lily quietly placed a comforting hand on his shoulder but said nothing. Outside, evening sunlight shimmered across the lake. Weeks later, Ethan made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of selling the property or keeping it private, he transformed part of the lake house into a small retreat for families dealing with grief and loss. Counseling sessions, free weekend stays, and support groups slowly filled the once empty rooms with life again. Near the entrance, Ethan placed a small bronze plaque. It read, "Truth heals what silence destroys." Vanessa lost everything trying to steal a dying man's final wishes. But Ethan gained something far more valuable, the truth, and finally, peace.